Welcome to Alienating the Audience, a show that tickles the soft underbelly of science fiction. I'm Andrew Heaton, the thinking man's nerd. I rarely believe conspiracy theories, but I almost always enjoy them. And on today's show, we're going to explore fan theories, the conspiracy theories of science fiction about Star Trek. Theories that call characters and motivations and entire films into question. And inevitably we'll go off on a philosophical tangent to answer, do transporters just kill you and plop a clone down on the planet? And if so, should we still do it anyway? Grab your phaser and a bat'leth, and let's go! I am joined today by two fantastic science fiction enthusiasts and Star Trek fans, Nick Sperdute, comedian, ally, frequent vagabonder in the world of comedy.
Hello.
Nick, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Heaton.
And John Krikorian. John hosts Trek Profiles podcast, which is a wonderful program. And I think the first light bulb moment I had where I went, oh, science fiction is a community. It's not just a bunch of people separately watching TVs. It's actually like a community of people. It was a really big light bulb for me, a wonderful program that you run. And a lot of the guests that we brought onto the show have come directly from John. And so you remain, I think you were the Ira Graves to my Noonian Soon on this podcast. And then, Nick, I think that makes you Lord.
All right, fine.
Well, I'm just happy to be on, Andrew. It's always a thrill to talk Star Trek, and it's always a thrill to be able to share some of this crazy fandom with other people. And that's probably one of the lessons I've learned from doing my show, which is that people get into Star Trek because they like the show, and then once they get into the community, they go to the conventions and they do all that other stuff because of the other fans that they meet. And it's really about that for them. And I think that's one of the glorious things about Star Trek fandom in general.
It's a great group of people. You know, one of the emails that I get regularly about this program is just how much people listening enjoy the guests, because everybody's just very excited and happy and is excited that you're excited and wants to share it. It's a good group. And on that note, we are going to go over today what I'm going to refer to as conspiracy theories, but we could also call fan theories of how the show actually went down. And I went on a deep dive on this and found it fascinating to look at the various theories concocted by fans about how the actual Star Trek universe works. And I thought we could go over some of these either for their hilarity or their brilliance, or rather just how interesting the show would be looking at it from that particular vantage point. So the one that I'll kick it off with that I thought was particularly interesting, because I think I agree with this, is the Borg are intentionally allowing the Federation to win. They keep doing a minor incursion into Federation territory. They get beaten back, and then they wait 5 to 10 years and do it again. And the reason that they do it is that they know that if they were to just flat out take over the entire Federation, they can't milk them for new technological advancements. But if they go in and poke them, then the Federation spends a lot of time and effort developing better starships and torpedoes and things. Then they pull back and they come back 5 years later and it's better. So
let me ask you a question, Andrew. Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Does your cell phone start to lose battery as new generations come out? Yes, it starts to get worse, and cell phones start to get better. It's the same exact thing. As soon as they see that this new generation, or they start to poke it, and they're like, it's not as good. So then you have to revamp it and keep going, and that's what the Borg does.
Right.
It was a weird analogy, but that's what I'm going with.
No, I see what you're saying on both ends, because the cell phone technology, the 24th century must be stellar. And then beyond that, it could be a thing where they capture an Excelsior class ship and they're like, the screen is cracked. I don't. What are we going to do with this? We need to get a new one. Well, you know what? We'll give him a bit of time to get that warranty. Then we'll come back. What do you think, John?
It really all comes back to vampires, right? And you really have to just start there with this type of analysis. Because if you have the idea that the Borg are space vampires, you have to think now, if you were a vampire and you found a human to feed on who was really tasty, would you really want to drain it all? Or wouldn't you just kind of want to keep him or her around, as like a little snack, a little human amuse-bouche, for you to have, a little something on when you get peckish. So I
agree with you, but do you think that they are they space zombies or space vampires? Because I feel like they're more space zombies.
Space tech vampires, right? In your analysis here, right? The theory is like they go in, they have a little snack, a little tech snack off the Federation, and they're like, ooh, nom 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 nom, that was good. Let's see what else they come up with in a few years, right? So they're just like these giant space tech parasites that come in, have a little snack, and then off they go, right? And I think it totally makes sense, right? They were playing the Federation all along, and they were playing the 5D chess. Meanwhile, Picard and Janeway and all them thought they were getting over. I will subscribe to that theory.
Yeah. Nick, what do you think? Do you buy the theory?
I do. And if you really think about it, there's not a whole lot of this, like, we're going to destroy you in this amount of time. It's a lot of, like, we're going to get you, and then it's like, and it's just to encourage, but it's not like this is the moment that it's going to happen, because if they did that, and then they could be called on their bluff.
What? Okay, so if we're the Federation... We're the the head military council or whatever. We're smoking cigars with Admiral Cartwright and whoever else is running the show.
I need to see your qualifications first.
Do we just go?
I'm sorry.
Well,
Heaton, I know this is an analogy, but really though, I'm going to need to see at least some qualifications. I'm going to need something here.
Nick has
I trust John.
Very, very high security standards, even in this hypothetical scenario on a fictional show.
You're darn right.
He will not allow me to parade. No, I'm just wondering, what would be the Federation's play then? Like, if they invade Beta Z, do they just go, yeah, all right? No. Or do they,
No, what you do is you go back to TOS, and you go to the planet with the feeders of Vol, with the crazy blonde wigs, right? And the right?
Oh, right,
You go get those people, and what you do is you transplant them to all the border worlds where the Borg is, right? So when they show up looking for a tech snack, they're like, who are these clowns, right? There's nothing to eat here, and then they turn around and they go. And that way you get to turn one around on them.
Yeah. I really like that. So basically what you're saying, John, is that if you are the Federation, Supreme High Command, just farm out Amish people to border worlds, and then they'll show up and go like, oh, butter churners? I don't want to assimilate this. Let's go assimilate a different quadrant.
We're going to get we're going to get 1 star in the Borg Yelp. I know it, and that's the way to have it happen.
I think that is a really smart play. Another theory that I read that I agree with this one too. That when the Q were introduced, I'm sorry, when the Borg were introduced, I believe in the same episode that the Q were introduced, or
no,
early on,
quite the same episode.
No, I guess because the Q come in at what? Encounter?
Yeah, they're right at the beginning. Encounter at Farpoint. Yep. Yeah, and the Borg come in shortly thereafter, but not the same episode.
Right.
He does. So he teases a threat though, early on.
Yeah.
Q teases a threat. Yeah.
Right, and when he introduces the Borg, I feel like in the episode itself, it comes off very malicious, and even in Voyager, Janeway, when she's interacting with Q, says something like, "Oh, and you introduced us to the Borg. Thank you for that." And the theory that I read is that Q did it so that the Federation would know that this giant existential threat was coming, and they could get their act together and start, presumably putting Amish people on border worlds to stop them. But that this was actually a munificent act on behalf of Q, and that this wasn't just him screwing with them, but actually in a playful way leading them to a threat. What do you think?
I think you would have to say that assumes a lot that's not in evidence. You would have to assume that Q is really, I think, much more of a strategic thinker than we have evidence for. I'm not buying that one at all. I just don't see it, because Q doesn't strike me as the kind of person who thinks about other people first. I think he really has that streak of narcissism, and that would be a bold kind of kindness that I just don't see coming forth from that guy. But I could be wrong.
Okay. You see him as an omniscient sociopath or something to that effect, or at least omniscient narcissist?
Well, I was talking to my kid about this when I was watching Star Trek with him the other day, and the point was, he was like, well, Borg could do, Q could do this, Q could do that, Q could do these other things, he could have whatever he wanted. And the point was that I was trying to tell him was, when you live for an infinite amount of time, you've done all the things as many times as you could want to do all the things. Yeah. And just the sheer boredom of living has to be a crushing depression. And it's surprising that he had some small shred of normality to him at all, that he was even able to talk to Picard and anybody else. I just can't imagine that they wouldn't all be stark raving mad.
Even doesn't that happen in Voyager? Isn't there a guy named Quinn that like wants to be euthanized for that reason because he's so bored of immortality, and there's like a whole war in the Q continuum?
Absolutely, yeah. He wants to be taken out because he's done it all, been there, done that, and that was the whole point of the episode, was trying to find something to motivate him, right? And that was one of the points of it. But I think that the soul crushing weight of that eternity sitting on top of you, that's a big thing for anyone to deal with, man. So I don't know.
But if you're omnipotent, could you just snap your fingers and make yourself happy? Like, is that I feel like you could at least manifest Prozac in like massive forms if you wanted to. Like, you could have like a galaxy's worth of Prozac if you felt like it. Of course, now that I feel like you just got me high, John. Now that I'm thinking about it, though, at some point in a billion years of Prozac whiffing, of a galaxy-sized Prozac cloud, you'd go, is there a point to this? Like, you'd still eventually go, what? Like, I'm not growing. All I'm doing is, playing with toy soldiers from various starships and taking the Q nitrous oxide equivalent. And what am I doing here?
If you want to deep dive into the insanity of being a Q, there were some books that were written, and one of them I want to recommend to you, which was actually recommended to me by our mutual friend Alexandra. It was called Q Squared.
Oh yeah, that's the one with Trelane, right? When
yes,
he's also,
and.
Did you read that one, Nick?
There's a whole thing in there that like he spent a certain number of years just floating along as a mote on a piece of dust, and like doing all this crazy stuff. And you think to yourself, man, the soul crushing weight of like having nothing else to do but to sit around and float on a piece of dust for some period of time. I don't know. I mean, I could only spend so many days, refiling my cabinets and, organizing my things. And if I had all eternity to do it, I think I'd go stark raving mad. But
that's also, I don't know if you guys have watched The Good Place at all. Have you watched The Good Place? Yeah. So, I mean, if towards the end, this is a big spoiler for anybody that hasn't seen all of it, but towards the end, they kind of figure out, they get to The Good Place, and everybody's just kind of like bored out of their minds, and they're just kind of there, and everybody's like, you're in The Good Place. What is it? And they're like, yeah, but like, we've been here for thousands of years. We don't care anymore.
Yeah, eventually
it's the same thing. And then eventually they say, okay, well, now we'll open a door. So if you want to just be erased from existence, and most people do it after a while, they just lose the interest, and they're just like, oh, yep, I think, they make it a little bit more simplistic. Like, you have this like satisfaction at a point, and then you're like, okay, this is when I'm going to go. But I imagine Q would have done that a long time ago. You'd have to imagine. Or at least most of the Q.
You guys have put so much pathos into what I hitherto just viewed as a space trickster. Like, I viewed him as sort of a Nancy with like massive powers. He's Brer Rabbit with massive powers. Like, he's a trickster that finally runs the show, and now I feel sorry for him. But good book recommendation, by the way, because I do remember reading Q Squared and really enjoying it. And Trelane is in it, and I won't spoil anything beyond that. But Trelane turns out to be of the Q continuum.
Absolutely. And I will say it has the single most haunting / terrifying thing I have ever read or thought about in the world of Star Trek happens in that book, where I put my Kindle down and I had to message our friend Alexander, and I was like, why did you recommend this book to me? Why did you do this? Why did you do this to me? Now I have nightmare fuel for months on end, and it is all due to you. So there you go.
Yes, Q Squared is Cormac McCarthy's The Road for John Krikorian.
There's a scene, I won't give it away, but there's a thing with a turbo lift and Trelane in a turbo lift. And I thought, this is just, no, I'm out.
And I read that in high school, and I don't actually remember this moment. I'll ask you after when we close the interview. I assume it means I'm a sociopath, that I don't remember anything about this really dismal moment.
I don't know. I don't know. It could be one of these things where I was just in the right time and place, and it just hit me a certain way. But it was certainly something which was beyond terrifying for sure.
Whew. Okay. Well, I will. I'll jump categories then away from Q for a minute. We'll talk about false identities. These are conspiracy theories within the Star Trek universe that those that we know are not who we know. So one that I really like, and I like this because I don't actually enjoy the film at all, is that in Star Trek Into Darkness, Khan comes back. It's the Kelvin Timeline's reboot of Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan. So Khan is there. Both Spocks are there, and and Khan is played by Benedict Cumberbatch. And I kind of feel the same way I do about Benedict Cumberbatch's Khan that I do about Chris Pine's Kirk. There's really only ever going to be one Kirk. That's William Shatner. There's no way around that. I feel the same way about Ricardo Montalban playing Khan, that just chews every line he has. And so the conspiracy theory is that the so-called Khan, played by Benedict Cumberbatch in Into Darkness, is actually just some guy. He's one of the lieutenants of Khan that gets thawed out, and he's so devoted to Khan that he pretends to be Khan. That way the real Khan, Ricardo Montalban, is still frozen and ready to be thawed out whenever they get sent to their final destination. I like that one because it means that it means that they didn't ruin Khan for
We can all live in hope that immaculate chest of Ricardo Montalban is sitting in isolation, ready to be unleashed upon the world in all of its glory in the 23rd century.
Yeah.
That is a comforting thought, and I'm there for it.
If I ever could get myself motivated to work out in general, that would be my goal. Would to be have that sort of beyond manly just I mean, I would have oil on it all the time.
Space
it would
barbarian.
That's all I would look like all the time. And I wish I would have dressed like that for this. Next time I will.
I wish that I had a tenth of the confidence exuded by Ricardo Montalban when playing that role, because I feel like my tagline is, please like me.
You got to take that off your Twitter, by the way. That's hard to see.
I got to take that off my Twitter. It makes me a walking target. But I like that one.
By the way, I heard an interview with Nick Meyer, the director of the film, and he says that's the number one question he gets asked is, was that really Ricardo Montalban's chest?
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Really?
The guy was just jacked.
That just tells me that the director's in on it too. And I appreciate him protecting Ricardo Montalban, who is alive and well and cackling
and also, I mean,
somewhere.
can you think of a better, this is a sidetrack, but can you think of a better movie where the main villain and the main protagonist never have a scene together, like actually together?
The Fifth Element.
I mean, I said a better movie. Then, so no.
Wait, that's a good point. Do Khan and Kirk never
they-
interact?
they
They
do
do
it
over the view screen.
Yeah, but
They
they don't
do
shoot.
over the-
They never shot a
over
scene
the
together
comm.
because of they couldn't get schedules worked out.
Really?
Yep.
That's
It's all
why?
scheduling. That's how 90% of Hollywood's made is scheduling. 90%.
Right.
When kids
Yeah,
are
well, that was,
in
with-
things
with-
and not in things, it's all scheduling.
Yeah, like Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the weird apparent plot and character arcs were just because they had to work around Carrie Fisher
because
and that kind of stuff.
What's her name? Was supposed to have a much larger role.
Yeah,
Kelly Marie Tran.
yeah.
She was supposed to have a much bigger role, but she didn't because of that. Tran, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I love this next conspiracy theory. I think this next conspiracy theory is brilliant, and that is this: Lore is Data. So Lore's in maybe 4
Does that make
episodes,
me
3
Data?
episodes. That would make you Data, yes.
Until
You'd be
I
Data.
die.
Until you die. So in the regular understood Star Trek The Next Generation plotline, Lore is introduced, and he is the older brother of Data. He has emotions, but he's a bit unhinged and sociopathic. I can't remember if he escapes or he's bested. I feel like they actually deactivate him, but he gets reactivated at some point and takes over like an autonomous wing of the Borg and all these different things. At some point, Data and Lore confront each other. Data defeats Lore, disassembles him, and Lore's pieces are sent to the Federation. So according to this conspiracy theory, Lore beats Data. Lore defeats Data, disassembles him, and then parades himself as Data through the rest of the Next Generation. And so the second half of TNG is actually Lore just biding his time, pretending to be an emotionless android for his own sinister purposes. But at the very last minute, redeems himself by dying in Nemesis. And I love this theory because it makes me look at I want to watch some TNG episodes and just put on my Lore, I want to put on my Lore aluminum foil hat and see what they look like.
Unfulfilling, like really bad Chinese food, Heaton. Unfulfilling theory. Only because I feel like there's something missing from the theory, and it's the substance of what happened to Lore to make him switch and to want to live that life. I feel like that's a major question at the core of the theory, and it's not there. And so I feel like it's a nothing burger at the center of the theory. I am not subscribed. Do not want 1 star.
That's right. He is. John is not putting on the aluminum foil hat. What about you, Nick?
No, I don't buy it. Here's the thing. There are certain theories that I can get behind. I don't mind the Khan one. That's fine. These are like theories that make up for certain situations that we don't necessarily love in the series. This is just like meddling for the sake of it. This is just adding another plot line that they clearly didn't sell at all throughout the series because it just wasn't there. So those are the theories I'm not as interested in. I like the ones where it's like, well, you never know, like this Kirk might have been that Kirk's dad. Like it's different. I don't mind that shit because it's extra. This is just meddling.
You like loose ends being tied via the conspiracy theory.
You
don't like more loose ends being created.
Yeah. There's way more loose ends being created.
That makes sense. And you know what? John, I'm going to agree with you. I can't see Lore keeping a straight face that long. I can't see Lore keeping a straight face for an entire episode, let alone 4 to 6 seasons followed by 3 movies. That is just So I think you're right. Lore. Brent Spiner might be that good of an actor, but Lore certainly is not. And so for Lore to do that and not suddenly like have a sociopathic outburst where he lets everybody know, or he would have like teamed up with Moriarty and tried to which by the way would have been a great episode. That would have been a real surprise.
The one thing I'll say of that is if this is the truth, then Lore is really not as cool or as insane a villain as we'd always paint him to be. Because he's holding himself way too much like Data for that.
He's just difficult. Yeah. That's all. Yeah. He's just hard to get to know. But once he spends some time with you, he's actually just Data. Yeah.
He'd be all wind up in no throw.
Okay. You guys have convinced me. All right, I do not accept or endorse this conspiracy theory.
That was quick.
I agree. I've got an open mind, Nick. I've got an open mind. All right, Nick, I want to know what you think about this theory then, because this is, you mentioned the Kirk could be somebody else's dad, or I don't remember the exact line you used a minute ago, but I kind of think this one makes sense. The theory is Wesley Crusher's father is actually Jean-Luc Picard.
Okay, so here's what I'll say about that.
The conspiracy theory being that, so Jack Crusher's the dad, right? And that he died while he was the first officer on the Stargazer for Jean-Luc Picard. And the theory is that actually Jean-Luc Picard at some point had an affair with Beverly Crusher. There's clearly a lot of sexual tension. And so Wesley Crusher is his secret bastard
I'll
son.
say this, to be fair, I mean, reference the book we just mentioned, because I believe there's a whole storyline in there with Jack Crusher coming. Yeah, but not important. I don't want to spoil anything there, but
that's true. Yeah.
Basically, I always thought that was the case anyway. When watching the series early on, I remember just how like Picard and Beverly, they kind of like had this back and forth, and they would talk about the father, and I always just kind of was like, I think Picard's his dad. It's like, I can totally buy that. I can totally buy it. It's also like, and I don't know if...
It's why he hates him, but he puts up with him?
I don't know if Picard totally knows. That's what I would say. I would say that it makes sense to me that Picard would be the father, but that he doesn't actually know he's the father. He just assumes it's Jack's son, which is why he treats him the way he does, because he doesn't care.
They did at some point have a tryst, and he's not 100%
sure.
I
think they definitely slept together at some point. I don't think that's
at some point
may not even be a theory. That's probably canon, but it should be.
I think they do in some of the books.
But I
don't think they ever actually hook up in the series that we know of. But yeah. No, they clearly were gearing up for that, like because they do in the finale. I mean, granted, it's a scuttled timeline, so it's not how we know that Picard does not become a crazy bearded vintner. He becomes a clean-shaven vintner who saves Romulans from Borg. So very different timeline. However, in that timeline, he does in fact marry Beverly Crusher, who becomes the captain of a starship. John, what do you think?
Well, I think you have to go back and actually do a careful watch of season 1, and you will notice how Wesley just wants to get into Starfleet Academy, and every time he talks about it, Picard's always like, well, I don't care if you've saved the Enterprise 17 times, you're an acting ensign on board the Federation flagship, you're getting personal instruction from one of the best captains in all of Starfleet, and you're having none of this will get you into Starfleet Academy, son. None of this. And I was like, that is jerk dad behavior right there, right? That is stereotypical jerk dad behavior, right? When I was your age, I had 17 football trophies, and you will never measure up to half the thing that I was, right? I mean, unless they are totally gaslighting him, like, unless they already have, like, his acceptance letter, they're like, watch this. Well, Wesley, here you go. You better, take apart the entire warp engines and reassemble them, using nothing but a screwdriver and 3-day-old glue gun. And even then, that won't do it, So, but he's got that jerk dad behavior throughout the entirety of the season about how impossible it's going to be for him to get into Starfleet Academy. Just watch it, and you'll see.
I
think you're 100%
that's a lot
right.
of what I picked up on as far as it goes, and I believe that.
Well, because he's not doing like trying too hard stepdad, which would be hilarious to watch Jean-Luc. Wesley, I want you to come into my office. We could play catch. Like that, like, I'm always here for you after school. Yeah, that would be great. But you're right. He's definitely played the jerk dad. You know what? Okay, I'm sold on this. Nick, I think you're 100% right. I think Jean-Luc Picard and Beverly Crusher had an affair, and he's not sure. Yeah. But there's enough ambiguity.
I also kind of like
that
Beverly Crusher's not sure. I kind of like that.
There's no way she couldn't
I'm
know.
Sure.
She could have figured it. Well, sure, it could have happened right on top of. You never know.
But she's the doctor.
Well,
she has all the medical records.
Yeah.
You think she would have checked?
Yeah, she strikes me as the kind who's. She's going to do a DNA analysis, and
I don't know. Not my favorite doctor, so I'll take it.
Wait. Do you like Plansky over Beverly Crusher?
I'll take anybody over the Crushers. The Crushers are my least favorite family in the history of Star Trek.
You're glad Jack's dead.
100%. Because he could never show up.
He's in one episode as a ghost, and you're like, that was too much.
Even a reference.
Ghost
like,
Jack in.
I just want to be on record saying Dr. Pulaski was perfectly fine, and I enjoyed her season on Next Generation, and I thought she was a great addition to the crew, and I was sad to see her go.
I couldn't agree more.
More Diana Muldaur, please. That is all.
I like Tasha Yar.
I agree with you.
I thought she was great when she was on at the beginning. That's just me personally. And she dies in the most unsatisfying way ever.
I prefer Tasha Yar as the actress that does documentaries about Star Trek over Tasha Yar. I prefer her as an actress doing Trekkie deep dives over Tasha Yar. But point taken. I will bring it to one of my favorite all-time characters. Actually, my favorite all-time character specifically, which is Garak from Deep Space Nine.
Knows
yes, Garak is. Somebody, by the way, Nick, somebody sent me a campaign poster for Garak 2020, and the catchphrase is "especially the lies." It was great. So there's two theories with Garak. Both of these actually strike me as eminently plausible. And one of them strikes me as probable. The other one's possible, right? So the probable one is that Garak is actually a double agent with Section 31. The Black Ops, CIA, NSA equivalent of the Federation. I think that bears out for two reasons. One, it would surprise me 0% to have Garak turn out to be a double agent for literally anyone. If it turned out that he'd been working for the Breen the whole time, wouldn't surprise me. If it turned out he'd been working for the Romulans, wouldn't surprise me. And then if he'd turned it around on them and he was actually working for the Cardassians, he's probably a triple agent, right? So that doesn't surprise me at all. But it would also explain why, presumably, if the Federation has even reasonably good counterintelligence services, they would know that he's a Cardassian operative. It would be odd to allow a Cardassian operative to live on Deep Space Nine, which is at this tectonic edge of things happening all the time. So I think maybe that there's something to that Section 31 was getting information from him and they let him stay there.
I seem to think the one thing you'd have to get past with that is that a lot of double agents, it seems to me, historically speaking, and this is just based on books I've read of actual stuff from the Cold War, is that it seems to proceed from disillusionment with the regime. So you'd have to take it that his talk about Cardassia and how wonderful it is, and Cardassia Prime and the Obsidian Order, that he's got some disillusionment really at the core of it, and he puts a good face on it. Now, I think he totally could do that, but I'm not sure we've got enough story there to actually determine what that was. So this, for me, is a maybe. It would be satisfying if true. It would be really fun if true. But we've also seen that Section 31 is never really quite as good as they think they are. So basically in Star Trek, anytime we leave our main characters on the ship or on the station, they're kind of buffoons. So I find it really hard to believe they're able to play chess at that level. But could be wrong.
But again, what I'm theorizing here is that he's actually a triple agent, that he is playing Section 31 for his own purposes and is at root a loyal Cardassian. That is my theory.
I'd more likely to buy that one.
I would also be more likely to buy that one, but this is also just a fluffer theory for me. You're just adding to the extra crap.
This is just an opportunity to talk about how exquisite a character
I
Garrick
know,
is.
which
and we should always take these opportunities
hit every
to talk
time we
about
talk about Star Trek, and that's fine. Yeah, I'm okay with it. I don't disagree with it, but also he does play it so suspiciously the whole series, so it certainly seems probable, as opposed to the Data lore one, where it doesn't seem probable based on the acting of it. It wouldn't super surprise me if in the back of the actor's mind he knew that or he thought that.
Right.
Just because there's things there that hint at it more.
That's a kickoff point of what's in the back of Andrew Robinson's mind as he plays an Emmy and Oscar-winning performance of Garrick over multiple seasons, and that is how he is motivating Garrick. So one of the things that I learned when I watched the Deep Space Nine documentary that I didn't realize was that he was playing Garrick gay, or he was playing him bi, depending on how you want to look at it. But at least during the first encounter with Julian Bashir, he's playing him gay. Like the actor is intentionally kind of bored and flirty and just wanting to seduce the kind of the twink doctor. Then that's what's going on. I didn't realize that, probably because I watched it when I was in high school and just didn't pick up on those kind of overtones. But the conspiracy theory that I've read, or fan theory that I've read, is that Zayal, Gul Dukat's daughter, and Garrick are mutually each other's beards. So Zayal is just pretending to be enthralled with him, but she's actually probably hot for Kira. And Garrick, meanwhile, is doing whatever Garrick's doing, and Zayal's fun to hang out with, and they kind of buy each other cover.
Yeah, I'll buy it. Whatever.
This goes into the whatever camp.
Little side note stuff.
I feel like these are not really as substantial a conspiracy theory as we could be talking about, Heaton. I have a granddaddy theory I'd love to run by you guys and see what you thought.
I also have one that I think is pretty good that I didn't make it up. I've read it, but go ahead.
I didn't make this up.
Sure.
So, have you gentlemen ever heard of the Westfall universe theory?
No.
All right. So there was a TV show in the 80s you may have heard of called St. Elsewhere.
Yes.
Right?
I've heard of it, yeah.
So it takes place in a hospital, and that's the whole point of the show, is it's a hospital show about medical stuff and the doctors who were there, right? We've had a million of those. Well, the very final scene of the very final episode did this really weird twist where they show a model of the hospital inside a snow globe being played with by a boy who's on the autism spectrum, and his dad is actually one of the doctors that was in the hospital. And so the ending of the show suggests that the show didn't actually happen. It was all in the mind of this autistic boy as he's looking in the snow globe.
So the Bob Newhart show scenario.
Very similar to that. Now, the idea, though, the problem is that St. Elsewhere had numerous crossovers during its run with other shows. So characters from Cheers appeared in St. Elsewhere, which then subsumes Cheers into the Westfall universe. Right. So therefore, Cheers did not actually occur. Well, there are some sleuths out there, and you can go online and search Westfall universe theory, or does everything live inside the Westfall universe? And there's 180 shows which are connected, including Star Trek, has been subsumed into the Westfall universe. So it only exists inside the snow globe of St. Elsewhere, inside the mind of Tommy Westfall, this autistic boy.
Wow.
And so there's a chart with strings and arrows and stuff going everywhere. And you can Google this and find it all. I mean, it is absolutely cray-cray. But that is one of the theories that is out there, that all these other shows are subsumed inside the Westfall universe.
Wow.
That is a fascinating theory, and I feel like Star Trek even has that within its own corpus. With Benny, is it Benny Russell from Deep Space Nine? That is the 20th, like early 20th century black sci-fi writer that is played by Avery Brooks. And by the way, I hate that. Not because I don't enjoy the acting of all the characters. I think they do a wonderful job. I really dislike when Star Trek tries to rip the rug out from under itself. And it's like, hey, you've dedicated like 1,000 hours of your life to watching this show. It's an illusion. Even though you already knew it was an illusion, it's an illusion within an illusion. Even the fictition you believe, it's an illusion. So I feel like, that's like, I don't know, maybe the kid looking at the snow globe was reading paperbacks from Benny Russell. And there's like a weird feedback loop going on.
The Bob Newhart one, Heaton, if you don't know, is at the very end of the show Newhart, because Bob Newhart had two shows. He had the Bob Newhart show and he had Newhart. Right. So at the very end, the last scene and the very last shot of Newhart is Bob Newhart from the Bob Newhart show waking up. So that show was just a dream for his other show.
Yeah. Which is brilliant, and I have to say is fine within a comedic context. If nothing else, I am a sucker for callbacks. I love callbacks. And that is a brilliant callback.
I can tell you, John, as someone who's done a lot of improv with this man, he is a sucker for callback.
I'm a sucker for callback. And as I recall, Nick, don't they even bring the wife from the Bob Newhart show to wake up next to Newhart on Newhart to really drive it home?
They do it on another show too, as a spoof on a different show where he does. It's the same exact. I don't know if it's the last episode of another show, but it happens in another show just to spoof that show. Yeah.
Well, they did it. They did it in Star Trek Enterprise. The whole series of Star Trek Enterprise, as you're watching it in the show, is not, in theory, you watching it in real time. Because when you get to the last episode, the last few scenes, it's Riker and Troy watching it in the holodeck. Yeah. That's how it ends. And they're like, so that's why they made that decision over there, was because this other thing happened. And so that's great. And so, okay, off holodeck. And that's like the end of the show.
Well, that makes sense for why the theme song's so terrible.
Oh, yeah, because Enterprise is actually just Netflix for Riker and Troy.
That's pretty much. But now we know that Nick does not have faith of the heart, and I am noting that on my clipboard.
Yeah, Nick, I'm with you.
John,
Nick, I'm with you.
Every single Star Trek show has the same type of theme song, except for
swelling orchestral music, and then all of a sudden we've got Rod Stewart with his raspy voice being all 90s glam rock.
It's a lot.
Nick, here's what I really hope. I hope Bob Newhart and the lady that played the wife in the Bob Newhart show, that they filmed like 15 different variations of that will be metered out on different shows over the next 30 years. How great would that be if, like, when How I Met Your Mother concluded, Bob Newhart bolts up in bed and goes, honey, I had the weirdest
dream. From what I heard, it would be more satisfying.
I was this
than
guy
the
and I had a blue bugle.
So from what I've heard, it would be more satisfying than the actual ending of that show. I didn't watch it. I didn't care for it, but I heard it wasn't a great ending.
I just want to believe that the Daryls exist in real time and space. That's all. So therefore, I cannot subscribe to that theory. I don't want a Daryl-less universe. That's all.
Well, so there's a couple of other conspiracy theories I read about the nature of the universe of Star Trek, although they're not casting doubt on the entirety of the canon, like with the Benny Russell story. Rather, they're episodically casting doubt on it. So the first one is that Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, which is one of my favorite films, by the way, and I'll defend it. I think it's great fun. I love Sybok. I think he is a rich, complex character.
Sybok a lot.
Yeah. So I'm not a Final Frontier hater. The theory is that the Final Frontier is actually just the period of time in which Kirk is in the Nexus. It begins, he's out in the outdoors, hanging out with his buddies, and he fights God and meets Spock's brother who laughs, who's a cult leader. Also, Scotty and Uhura are in a relationship, and Uhura does a fan dance in order for them to invade. Like it is kind of a fever dream movie. And so the theory is that is just the unfolding delusions of Kirk when he's in the Nexus, and it might be the sort of calculated utilitarian amount of having minimal problems in order to overcome them to feel purposeful.
John,
it's an interesting theory. I have never subscribed to that one. The one that I got agitated about and had to cogitate on quite a bit was the Picard version. That
Right.
he never left the Nexus and he stayed there in that demented Victorian Christmas. And with the very weird house and the children who are wearing weird costumes, and I don't know any woman who would choose to dress like that today, but whatever. And the idea is that everything that happened after that is in Picard's head. Like, he only escaped the Nexus in his head. He's still there. That's the version that I've heard. And
I've heard that too. Yeah,
I find it vaguely attractive in a way to think about.
that one makes more sense. Well, listen,
that
the
one,
other one, okay, as far as the theory goes, no, it was just a movie directed by William Shatner for like $28 million. That's all he got for it. That's why the movie's the way that it is. It has nothing to do with that.
And if he'd gotten what he asked for like $40 million. He wanted to like originally he was literally going to fight God.
Yeah.
It was literally going to be William Shatner fighting God. And the reason that they didn't do it is because he wanted to have these like rock monsters that would fight on God's behalf, and he couldn't afford the rock monster costume. So they're like, he's an alien.
Yep, that's all it was.
Although there's a conspiracy theory that the alien in Final Frontier is in fact God. It is explicitly the God of the Old Testament, the vengeful, wrathful, jealous God of the Old Testament, and that Kirk defeats him, thus showing the ultimate triumph of science over religion.
Now, that could be. Nick, I'm sorry. It looked like you were going to... you're not buying that one?
I'm just giving it a whatever. Just throws it into my whatever pile.
I'll say, I think the Nexus one, I think, has more legs up until the series Picard. I think up until this, because if you're just looking at the films, so he goes into the Nexus, he doesn't leave the Nexus. What happens in the following films? He's able to defeat his nemesis, the Borg, meet Zefram Cochrane, which would be like one of us like defeating our arch nemesis, and then going back and meeting, Abraham Lincoln or Albert Einstein or something, going to a planet of immortals and having a love affair with one, and then subsequently beating the hell out of a younger version of himself. Like there is a kind of fever dream element to it with some like, psychological overtones. However, once we get into the Picard series, I don't really see him being I don't see the Picard series being the fantasy of Picard. I don't see that being the
I don't see it either. I don't see him coming up with the homicide of the Bjayzl character by 7 of 9, which is probably the most shocking thing I think I've seen in any Star Trek episode ever. A straight up stone cold murder by one of the heroes of the show. And so I don't see Picard coming up with something like that. So maybe you're right. They kind of took a different turn. It maybe was in the possible column. And then when they did the Picard show, they took it in the unlikely to impossible column. So that's how I'll come down on it.
Different universe.
So I'm officially retiring that conspiracy theory.
The one other one,
I do not.
There's one other one I wanted to mention, which was when you were talking earlier, was the Khan stuff. Is that the Khan took, like, basically during the eugenics war and whatnot, basically wiped out most of India and China. And then World War III devastated the rest of it, which is why there's so few of that descent in the actual Star Trek universe.
Which I got to say, demographically appears to be true. Now, I don't know Discovery as well. I think Discovery has more Asian representation in it than a lot of the former ones. But TOS does have George Takei, but he's Japanese. He's not Chinese. You're right. Generally speaking, there is a marked lack of Chinese and Indian people, given that they respectively in our time period have about 1 billion each on a planet of how many?
8.
How many folks we got on our planet right now?
Yep.
8 billion. Good job, everybody.
Captain Georgiou is an ethnic Chinese person who lived in Malaysia, and she's in Discovery. Yep. You have Harry Kim, who I believe is Korean. And then Hoshi Sato. I'm not sure what her ethnicity or nationality is in the show, but she's definitely some type of Asian, broadly speaking. And we actually also see an Indian Starfleet captain in Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home.
Yeah.
That's
4.
So, okay. So this sounds like a theory that works pretty well up through TNG, and then following TNG kind of loses its steam.
And of course, Dr. Bashir.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it's true. Well, he's of Middle Eastern extract, isn't he?
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I believe he's Arabic, although I don't really want to get in the habit of just like putting ethnic labels on everybody in Star Trek. But all the same, it is an interesting theory. A spinoff to that theory, Nick, is that Khan wiped out the French, and that is why Picard speaks very good English. See, I always just assumed that Picard just like spoke English and French interchangeably, and he speaks like a French duke or he speaks like an English duke. But there's an episode where Data references French, and he says, French, a now obscure language, used to be the predominant language on Earth. And Picard says, Mr. Data, that represented the sophistication of the world at that time. But he doesn't say, which you speak, Captain Picard. He says this obscure, like he references it like Esperanto. So apparently Picard, if he does speak French, doesn't speak it as his first language. He speaks English as his first language, as presumably everybody else does in France.
And presumably everybody in the entire history of Star Trek does, except for the Klingons.
Yes, yeah.
Heaton, you're making the francophones turn off Star Trek for all time right now with your words. Caution.
Well, I'll try and swing it back. The other possibility is that Khan nukes Britain, and that all of the British flee across the channel to France as refugees and swamp their country. And so it's really just those darned English that are causing the problem.
I do like that Khan gets put into the top of all this.
Yeah. You know, I would enjoy like a good actual eugenics war movie with Khan. I feel like that it appears to be such a massive chapter in Earth history, and it's always referenced in a kind of tangential capacity. But it appears that a lot of stuff happened.
There were rumors for a time that Nick Meyer, who was the director of Wrath of Khan and Undiscovered Country, that he was pushing a miniseries at CBS that would cover this. But nothing ever came of it. But I think that was his pitch, is that he wanted to do a limited series, miniseries type show for All Access that would cover the eugenics wars and what had actually happened. But, the one thing I want to say, though, is you got to be really careful when you try to figure out in Star Trek broadly, like what they actually mean and what Federation history is, or like what the economics of things are, because when you look too closely at this stuff, it all falls apart. I mean, in that same episode, I think, where they were talking about, for the French language, they were talking about flags. They're like, oh, colors used to represent nations, and red, white, and blue for the United States, or blue, white, and red for France. I think that was in the same episode. And I mean, they're all wearing Delta shields that symbolize something. They're all the Federation has banners. We see Kirk actually planting a flag at one point in TOS. I mean, you can't look too closely at this stuff for consistency, because that's a promise that Star Trek never made. That a lot of fans they keep trying to cash that check that they never got written to them, and I just think it's a fool's game.
Yeah, and there's just simply such a gigantic corpus that it would be very difficult to do that. And plus, like, you get into the mind of like Gene Roddenberry during TOS, like, I doubt at any point, even in his most like confident, like, like 3 drinks in, like, Gene, what's this going to look like? We might get 2 series out of this. Like, we might, we might actually get a 4th season. Man, if things went really well, we'd get a film. Like, if they said, like, you're basically going to spawn a religion, and it's going to, take up a combined 4,000 hours of screen time with over 1,500 different actors and 20,000 books. Like that would be unfathomable.
And weirdos in the year 2020 are going to sit around talking about your show from 1966 on the internet like it's really cool and relevant.
Speak for yourself, John.
People are going to have a radio show you can download onto your phone where they post conspiracy theories about this.
Hey, I'm on Twitter every day talking about Star Trek. I do a Star Trek podcast, so I say all that out of love.
Yeah, no, you do. Yeah, I'm all for it.
Me too. Well, so I'll run through a couple more things. These are a little bit less wacky. These are more maybe thought exercises, but they seem to make sense. So one of them is just that the reason that these Star Trek uniforms change from series to series is actually intentional on behalf of Starfleet. They do it so that time travelers can immediately recognize what period they're in. Given the amount of time travel shenanigans, that would actually kind of make sense. Like, you jump in and you're like, oh, Crimson uniforms. Okay, I know what's going on here. Gray on top. Borg are around. So I feel like that would actually have a practical application within the Starfleet universe.
strikes me as very unlikely that time travelers would naturally run into Starfleet people everywhere, but it seems like that's what happens in the show. But I mean, if you were to think about,
can't swing a dead cat without hitting a Starfleet officer encountering someone from the future.
That's like saying, this one sign I'm going to put on the side of a building over here just in case in the future somebody finds it. It's very, very unlikely in the vast universe that they would just happen to land somewhere in the Federation and land somewhere where there's Starfleet people wearing uniforms. But, could it be a thing? Maybe. You got another theory on the list, though, that I'm much more interested in talking about, but we'll get to that.
Well, let me say this about that whole theory. So then how far back did they know that they were going to time travel? Because they've been changing this theory, or they've been changing uniforms. I mean, if you go Enterprise to TOS in chronological order, it means that they were we've been doing that forever. The Army has looked like the Army since the 1900s.
It was the guy in the jet. He told him. The guy from the
exactly.
60s. Remember that?
Yeah, I do remember
when they took the jet pilot, right? He wrote a letter to the Federation of the Future, right? And he knew exactly where to put it. So they'd be like, hey, make sure to change your uniforms because time travel, it's going to be a thing and it's going to be crazy up in here. And that's what it was.
My new theory that I just made up that I like more is that the captains get to pick. Is that they put the captain on the ship and they're like, okay, you have these sets of uniforms. You get to choose from whatever you like. Choose your and then Kirk was like, I think I should wear yellow. He's like, yeah, my first officer, blue maybe
uniform.
Although I guess that would have been technically before him, right? But it would have been Pike's choice.
Nick, I love that. So initially they're doing that. Like an admiral's like, I want a crazy aluminum foil flower as my insignia. And somebody else says something like I'm an ambassador and for some reason I'm in charge and I get to have a chevron and then they're like, okay, everybody shut up, we're just gonna have red jumpsuits, okay, we're just gonna have red jumpsuits, you're gonna kind of look like you're on a submarine.
It kind of makes sense if you think of the captains like Kirk. It makes sense for Kirk to be like, I want everybody to be very clearly, I want to be colorful, and then Picard's like, no. Everybody looks like this. It's got to be real clean and nice, and it's got to look like the war and that sort of. I mean, I'm liking the new theory that I just made up. I'm going to put it on the internet right now.
No, I like this. So Picard goes with the TNG uniforms because he wants them to have to jerk down the uniform because he wants them to always think about their posture. He wants them to get up and go, time to straighten myself up. I can't be too slouchy.
Kirk does that with his shirt because it's not very long too. Especially when he wears the old dresses, he pulls it down.
Yeah. There might be something to that, Nick, because I was watching a Deep Space Nine episode a couple of months back, and I think it's Will Riker Thomas Riker when he's pretending to be Will Riker comes on Deep Space Nine, and he is wearing like a TNG uniform, whereas everybody else is wearing those uniforms with like kind of the purple undershirt collar thing. And I was like, wait a minute, I always just assumed that this was a time period thing, but it's
well,
not.
In Discovery, you look at Discovery. I mean, the Enterprise still has that, or they still have their uniforms. Pike's wearing his yellow and everything, and then they go in Discovery and they all have their own. I think it's the captain. I'm telling you. It's the captain who christens the ship, right? It's the one who takes the bottle, shatters it, and goes, this is what you're wearing. That's how I feel.
I want to be a fly on the wall for that conversation, Nick. Congratulations, Nick. You are now the captain. So tell me, were you thinking pastels?
John, we'll shoot this sketch. I promise.
Leopard prints? I mean,
we'll shoot this sketch,
what do you
John.
want? Tiger stripe? Would you like to pull a tribble out of the hat? We could be random choice, right? Hurry up, they're multiplying. I mean,
I'd love to see the Mirror universe decisions because that's my favorite uniform of all.
Would you like to shoot a tribble in a barrel and that'll be the choice, right? Perfect. That's how it is in the Mirror universe.
It's going to be the head of a tribble, which is just like a little bit of fur on the front.
Yeah, Nick, your preferred uniforms are dark universe,
TOS,
mirror universe.
Mirror
Mine
universe.
are definitely crimson.
That's my favorite uniform. Yeah. And second's Wrath of Khan.
Wrath of Khan, hands down for me.
Wonderful uniform.
Although, I'll say, if we got to design our own, everybody on my ship would look like a Gilbert and Sullivan character. There'd be a lot of like shoulder boards and like old timey hats and monocles and meerschaum pipes, and like people would encounter them, like the Borg would encounter them and be like, "Well, this is no better than the other place we went with the Amish. This is just like cannons. Well, we should really go to a different quadrant."
Andrew, you want them like they are at the beginning of Insurrection when they're all on the sailing ship.
Yes, that's what you want. That is exactly what I want.
All the time.
That is my favorite uniform. I want the 18th century British Sea Dogs uniform folled by Wrath of Khan.
I just want to see
100%.
Picard doing his jerk dad routine with Wesley. Wesley, polish the brass on my hat. And even that will not get you into Starfleet Academy. I can't do the voice like you do, but it would be glorious to see.
All right, so we'll run through a couple more. Quick one. This one makes sense to me. I think this is probably almost certainly just writing, but within the Star Trek universe, there's a marked difference between Ferengi and TNG when they're encountered. They're much more malicious and sinister and kind of odd acting, whereas in Deep Space Nine, they become these cartoonish businessmen. They are the greed is great kind of guys. So the theory is that they are intentionally misleading the Federation upon first contact. They intentionally act nuts in order to throw the Federation off and not disclose how intelligent they are and what their actual money grubbing activities are. They don't want them to know that there's minerals on the planet or whatever. That would make sense to me. I could see a civilization doing that.
So this is like the Ferengi are Vincent the Chin Gigante sort of ruse to keep the Federation out of it, right? He was that mafia boss who he would be found wandering around his neighborhood in his bathrobe and slippers, muttering to himself. Because he was trying to act crazy, so that if they ever arrested him, he'd be like, he can't be a mafia boss. He can barely string three words together, right? So that was Vincent the Chin. Yeah. So your idea here is that the Ferengi are doing like a Vincent the Chin idea, and they're putting right. I don't know. I how do you feel Quark would fit into all of this? Do you think he would have subscribed to this theory? Or do you think he would have had nothing to do with it? Where do you think Quark would land? I feel like I need to know.
I'd like to. I want to know that as well, but I'd like to reference the Vincent the Chin thing, because it's also that's referenced in Analyze That, when Robert De Niro is doing the same thing post Analyze This to try to get away with, and he's acting nuts the whole time. Not important, but I don't buy it. Here's what I'll say. Okay, fine. I can see that happening at first, but the whole series just feels like a lot. You're getting, it's a lot of commitment from a group of people that are very individualistic, and it feels like they'd be too quick to just be like, no, we're not gonna. What? As soon as they win one over, it would be like the end of the first season where they steal everything and leave, and then you're like, crap, we missed them. They're not gonna wait that many years to then be like, ha, which never happens.
Well, and then I've always been kind of confused as to how the Ferengis even have what appears to be a publicly funded military. Not that they're anarchists or they're like super libertarians or anything, but it just strikes me as like who within the Ferengi want to go, like they seem like a group that would have mercenaries. Because if it's so profit driven, it doesn't seem like they would have like in that episode. It's like a sense of duty and loyalty that Riker appeals to, and the first officer, like the camaraderie of first officers and that kind of thing, which isn't really how the Ferengis think in later seasons.
Yeah, but then that first officer overthrew the captain because his mission was not profitable.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was referenced in the episode, right? He's like, the captain has been was deposed because the mission was not, I ran the P&L on the mission and it showed up too many debits and not enough credits, so he's out of here.
Oh, perfect. Okay, then the contradiction's resolved. Thank you, John.
You're welcome. We're a full-service Star Trek show over here.
And then, so two more. One, and I think that this is actually canon now, but it was sort of a conspiracy theory for a while. You will notice across the chronology of Star Trek that the way Klingons look varies dramatically. Yeah. In TOS, they're basically in blackface. Yeah. they're in bronze face. But it's not like they're working with a low budget, and they're basically just Russians. They're space Russians, right? That's what the Klingons are. They're just a proxy for the Russians in TOS. And then in TNG, they've got the really cool turtleback heads that are my favorite variant of Klingons, and that was like how did that happen? What goes on? And they even address this in Deep Space Nine, or they wink at it in Deep Space Nine when they go back to time travel and do Trouble with Tribbles. That Worf goes, we don't talk about that to outsiders. And then in Discovery, the Klingons look completely different yet again. Now they look like reptoids. They're like space lizards, and very, very alien indeed. And so that which really threw me off when I first watched Discovery. I was like, again, like I thought we settled on the turtleback faces. Like that was what we were going to do. And so the theory was that Klingons, being a warlike species, were constantly there was a period of time where they were genetically one-upping each other in a kind of their own eugenics, and they were trying to outdo each other. And so the rapid and very different aesthetic changes are just side effects of this genetic war that they were doing in and of themselves before they eventually settled on the turtleback form. And I think Discovery codified that. Am I right?
I think Discovery didn't address it at all. Enterprise did.
What?
Enterprise had a whole series of episodes talking about this augment virus and the genetic stuff that you were talking about, but I don't think Discovery codified anything. I think they just went off and did their own thing.
Yeah.
Which a lot of...
They went, hey guys, we're giving you a big budget for Klingons. You can do whatever you want. And they were like, great, we're going to make them lizards, space lizards. One of them's going to be white.
I have my own theory that I've just made up. That I think that... Okay, so... I think that the Klingons, I think what is happening with them is part eugenic. I think it's part them trying to evolve and everything. But I think also that maybe their planet just and their people just evolve at a different rate than humans, like a lot quicker. Whereas we have, we evolved from primates and we've done it over a long period of time. This is still hundreds of years, you have to figure, most of the time, right? So, I mean, it's still happening over a decent amount of time, but I think maybe they're just evolving farther and farther. Because, I mean, realistically, you don't see one Klingon that looks one way and one that looks the other. So it's been long enough that almost the entirety of the generations have... because they also don't live to be super duper old. Not like the Vulcans, really. So, it could be almost generational type of... genes that are changing every time that people are, maybe it's the water or the environment or something like that.
Yeah.
And also, you know what I really think about the Klingons? Overused. That's me personally. That's just how I feel. There's so many other cooler species out there. Work with those. Anyway, back to the theory, but that's my new theory.
Nick, I think you make a very good point. And if it is indeed alien life, it might be different than the way our life works, where, I mean, now being a funny tall baritone is like the peak human experience, and it changes over time.
I missed that part. That.
But it changes really slowly. Yeah, no, that would make it like maybe just Klingons generations vary dramatically. Like there's just an aesthetic shift that constantly happens, or there's something.
I mean, if you look at it, the Klingons in Discovery probably could more reasonably become the Klingons in TOS. And then they move to the turtle heads, for TNG. I can buy that.
The whole point of T'Kuvma at the beginning of Discovery with his little lecture, right as the show starts, when we see the Klingons, that's his whole thing, is like, we have to remain pure Klingon, right? Klingon Mak Tak Judge. I think he even says in Cliff. I didn't think you were going to get Klingon out of me today, but there you go.
No,
that's a little bonus for you.
No, wonderful.
But his whole thing is like, remain Klingon, right? We have to be Klingons and be very, very Klingon and forget these Federation people and all these other races, right? We should stay to our own thing and do our own stuff. And, he has a whole religious movement about it. So I guess if you want to go down that road with that conspiracy theory, you'd have to kind of see him as like being like an ethno-purist.
Yeah, I mean, it's all inbreeding too.
Against it.
Just add that to the look, I mean, that's they just all breed within their own culture and it just evolves from that.
All right, so the final one, and I suspect this is what you were alluding to earlier, John, when you said that there was an interesting one on the list. And this, I have seen this dealt with in Star Trek several times in various ways, but the theory is when you are transported, you are not actually being lifted from point A to point B. You are being turned into energy, and then energy is being created into a duplicate of you on another planet. That is to say, when you go into a transporter, you are being completely destroyed molecularly. You're being obliterated by rapid radiation and everything, and then a clone with all of your memories is being popped into another planet at that exact point. I think there's a wonderful book called Federation, which is about Zefram Cochrane, and he actually does allude to that and talks about, he says that was how transportation technology worked in the early years of transportation technology, but now it's not. Now they actually do reassemble the molecular information and all of that, so it is in fact you. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful philosophical construct, though, because I don't I don't care either way. I'm atheist or Buddhist or something. I'm all about change, and I don't think that there's a me there. There's no there. So like if I could snap my fingers and just evaporate, and then a clone with my exact memories would pop up on the other side of the planet, it seems to me that is as much me as I was when I woke up this morning. I don't really care. That doesn't bother me at all. But if you have like a very specific idea of how souls work, I could see how that would kind of throw you out of whack. Because then in that case, like, you're dead. And then there's just a clone that's on that planet with your memories living for 6 minutes. And then when the red shirt dies and they beam back onto the ship, that guy dies and a third clone happens. And so, in fact, there's a ton of clones going on.
I would say that this is one of these issues that's a mirror. And depending on your priors and depending upon how you look at the universe, would determine how you interpret what's going on here with these transporters. Now, I will totally be on board with the idea that they are murder machines, my man. You go into that thing and you are putting yourself into a meat grinder. And yes, there's some other copy of you. And, I'm okay with it and accepting it at face value. But yes, every time you are beaming somewhere, a death has occurred. Now, some people are saying, well, it transmutes you into energy. And, well, as long as that same energy is reconstituted, man, that is like folly. Because I'm sorry, there is no way to say I'm taking this energy from this exact spot and it's that same energy. I mean, not even one little bit of that energy is different. The whole thing just makes my brain hurt. But the other part of it is, I will say, is that it has been my favorite moment in the history of my program is when I asked this question to Dr. Erin McDonald, whom I know
okay.
And she literally paused and froze for about 15 seconds, which is an eternity in a podcast. I had to edit it down. And she said yes. So I'm going with Dr. Erin on this. Transporters are murder machines. That's all I want to say. If you feel wrong, if you think I'm wrong about it, come at me, bro, on the Twitter. But that's how I feel about it.
Nick, is it a murder box?
I don't buy it. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, I agree completely. No, they're murdered and put back together. I did want to be the contrarian and make up my own theory, but no, it's very clearly. I mean, that's why all the McCoy doesn't like transporting at first, and it's all the doctor, the space doctor that's been doing all this work. They would probably know a little bit more about the situation than you or me, especially because I still haven't seen your qualifications, Heaton, so I don't really know. Exactly. Yeah. So if you could just send those to me after the show before we get on this council, that'd be great. But John, you're good.
It's just going to be a picture of me in a British sailing
outfit. I already have that one. If it could be anything else. I think I'm all for that one. That makes sense throughout the span of the show. There's nothing it's trying to fix or unfix. It just gives you more of a philosophical question tied into it, which is right up your alley, Andrew, which is not surprising there.
I love waxing eloquent about that kind of stuff. Nick, would you use the murder box?
All day, every day. If anything, you'd probably be like, you know what? My back doesn't hurt quite as much. Just like, you could probably adjust it. I mean, realistically, okay, if we're going to go into theories, you could probably adjust it so that this version of you comes out without the things that are negative about you in the first place. Like right now, for instance, I'm missing a toe. I'm not missing a toe, knock on wood. I hope I don't miss a toe. But if I do miss a toe, which happens, they could be like, no, now you have a toe. You come out of this.
Restore from backup.
Yeah. A little bit of energy. A little bit of energy, John, right?
Basically what happens with Scotty, right? Because Scotty beams up and he just doesn't put an output coordinate and he runs himself on loop for 100 years. So he's basically just a backup of Scotty in their computer system. And then in that basically what happens with Thomas Riker is they accidentally beam one up and they don't remember this, which just further confirms the murder box theory, John. Because it sounds like they're over like, oops, sorry, we were supposed to destroy that body. Whoops, my bad.
You know what? If you really want to go down an insane rabbit hole, if you gentlemen have not seen the animated series, there is some stark raving mad, and I mean capital M mad content in those animated series episodes from the 70s. And in one of them, they have a problem with their bodies. And one of the commanding officers, it wasn't Captain Kirk, it was another one. I think it was actually Captain April. And he's like, Commodore April. And he's like, yeah, we'll just restore from backup from like the last time we went through the transporter. Well, it actually said that in the show.
Oh, nice. Good news. Yeah, good to know. Hey, no problem, Captain Pike.
I mean, that would.
We'll just
I think it's too easy of a theory that it would fix too many problems in the show. I think too many issues that arise in the show where like it's just like, oh, now we have poison in our bodies. Okay, let's just go through the transporter and we can not have that poison in our bodies anymore.
Yeah. Although it would be rife for comedic sketches. So like on my ship where everybody's wearing their sailing outfits and whatnot, and they're like, hey, Captain Heaton, no problem. Your first officer's been, just like cut in half by a laser beam. No problem. And I'm like, yeah, we got it backed up. And they're like, oh, did you, when's the last time you backed up your phone to the cloud? Is it like it's I'm
sorry, you're low on storage,
you
buddy.
Need to pay. Yeah, you're supposed to be paying $2.99 a month for an extra terabyte. Oh no!
Well, there goes Joe.
We can give you his arm. I'll conclude with an interesting philosophical construct to add to this, because I think that there is something about. So
let me say one thing.
You call it a murder box. Are you okay using the murder box, John?
I would totally go inside the murder box because you know what? You got to accept it in the context of the show, and most of them seem okay with it. So I mean, we do things every day today that people would find weird, hundreds of years ago, and would say, "I would never do that."
Wait! You're going to use the murder box out of peer pressure? You just don't want to look awkward in front of other Starfleet officers, but you know you're going to be killed.
I'm a go along, get along guy. So I would be like, all right, murder boxes, what the hell? Sign me up for that. I'll try it. What the hell? If not, I'll do a refund. Yeah. But one thing I think they did not ever really explore in Trek, which I feel is ripe, is the use of transporters for gags. I mean, could you just imagine the kind of shenanigans that O'Brien could get into? Like, if you got on his bad side, I mean, all the...
You forget your clothes conveniently?
It could get even worse than that. You could think you're beaming to like, I want, I'm going to go to Paris for breakfast and then Rome for lunch and dinner at a steakhouse in Texas, right? And you could put all this in, and he could send you to Nome, Alaska. He could send you to the worst possible places. I mean, they could do things with clothes. He could give you a rash.
God
in a place
damn it, would you stop ordering pizzas to my transporter? God, I've been delivered 1,000 pizzas this week.
I mean,
okay, so quick philosophical question for you. We're all okay with the murder box and energizing ourselves. We step into the murder box. We're converted into energy. The energy is converted into an identical body with identical memories. We're all okay with this.
The murder box is delicious. Continue.
Yeah. Let's say in theory, what they do is you step into the transporter and they take the reading of you.
What do they do?
And then they take the reading of you. And
I'm
then
sorry, my phone cut out. Can you do that one more time? That's what
There it is. Yeah, that's $3,000 worth of sound effects right there, guys. You're blowing my whole budget. I have to purchase all of these individually based on length. But let's say for quality control purposes, because they want to make sure they never have another Thomas Riker, Will Riker shenanigan again. They beam you to the other planet or to the ship. Once you beam down on that, he looks in the rear, or he looks in the monitor and waves, and they go, okay, he's good, and then they phaser the other guy. Would you then do it?
You mean it's like basically a clone machine, and then they kill like the Rev 1 clone?
Well, I believe that is what you're proposing with the murder box. It's just that the death happens so instantaneously that it's tidy. It doesn't bother anybody.
I feel like there's a moral imperative there on the transporter operator. I don't.
Wait, you're okay with somebody going into an electric meat grinder? You're not okay with them getting shot?
I think it's another thing if they choose to do it themselves. I think it's another thing to put the burden on another person to say it's your job to take a phaser to that guy. That's not morally permissible.
I think the other thing there is it becomes... Yeah. If that was the solution, I don't think it would be the solution. They would keep working on it until we'd still be on like taking shuttles out to the planet if that was the case.
I hate to put too much of a hat on this, but because it is the philosophical construct of it being a murder box, you're not shot. It's just that you see a duplicate of you on the ship wave, and then the transporter evaporates you, right? So you wave at each other to confirm that it worked, and then you pop into the ether. Nobody shoots you. You know that you're doing it. It's consensual, but you also know it is very much a clone with your memories that is just transported, or that has emerged from the ether at the other site location.
I'll say this.
Are you still okay with this?
It would add a lot of storylines where a random clone would somehow get out They'd have to chase it down.
Yeah, they duck. they're like, I changed my mind.
It'd be like a lore clone would just like immediately run around.
There's a whole Netflix show about this. Have you gents seen Altered Carbon?
No.
Yes, I have. But do they? I guess there's a couple of instances where they've got like kind of like they have somebody that's able to duplicate their memories, and he's sort of like his own twin.
Yeah, you can
kinda
back up your memories to a hardware device, right? And so it is a full and complete backup. And if you're really insanely wealthy, you can clone your body. And so you can live for forever because your body gets broken, or I broke my arm, it'll never heal right. Well, I'll just kill myself and download myself into my new clone, right? And so that's how they live, right?
All day, every day.
Yeah, man. And they're just like, I got a bad haircut. Well, revert to the clone, right? But that's how the first season starts, is a guy gets killed and he reverts to backup, so he doesn't know who killed him because he reverted to yesterday's backup. And so he's hiring a detective to go find out who murdered him because he's like, I don't want it to happen again. So that's basically what the show is.
There's that new show on Amazon Prime too. I think it's called Upload, where it's a very similar premise where once you die, as long as you don't like die instantaneously, as long as you die and they can upload you, your conscious goes to a thing you've already paid for, basically, and you go live in a specific like your own afterlife that's now just like a 4 seasons or whatever, so that sort of thing.
Based on how much you paid.
Exactly. Which is very much what our society would do. Yeah. It's 100% realistic.
If you bought the budget package, where the beer is like warm and it's not so great, so yeah.
Just the coding isn't as good.
Well, for the record, I am perfectly fine with the Murderbox clone launcher. I am okay with this.
Savage.
Savage. Here's my reasoning. There's no static you. There's only like you're not a thing. You're an eddy in the pond. You're the pattern, not the object, right? The pattern's what's important. Your brain is demonstrably different today than it was yesterday. Your neurons have reformed since they did yesterday. It's not a massive shift, but it's not identical. So for me to go from like having every day I'm a clone of myself from yesterday, I don't think it makes a difference. I don't think that there's any I'm fine with it. I'm okay with it. If any aliens if they're going to abduct me anyway, like if they're already going to do it, they can go ahead and do it that way. It's fine. I'd rather just save the gas.
You ready for the probe?
that I object to. That I don't want to have to do.
The thing is
that I demand consent for.
Okay, so I tend to get bogged down by the actual idea, because the thing is, if we're waving at each other and saying all good, they're so quickly going to adapt that so that doesn't need to happen. So now it's just like we get a ping, that one's good, delete it. Okay. I just feel like that, because I think that's the only disturbing part.
So you're just bothered by the awkwardness, Nick? You're just bothered by the eye contact?
Yeah, a little bit. I think the only disturbing part is watching a version of yourself die in that scenario. I think that's the only really part that would throw me.
Okay. So So it's the visceral nature of it that bothers you. It's not the existential nature of it. If you knew that is exactly what's happening, but it happened within a fraction of a second, to where they took a snapshot, but you were unaware of it, Heaton. And it was a clone on the other end with memories, but you didn't have to lock eye contact. You'd be okay with it.
I had chicken for dinner, and I know what they do, but I didn't have to watch it.
Okay. You know what? I respect that. I think that's fine. Yeah. I can see that, Nick, where you and I are about to hop in the transporter, and I'm like, yeah, let's go. And you're like, whoa, hold on a minute. Is that a A32 Snazzo, or is that a B Klexon 59 microsecond? And they're like, oh, it's a Snazzo. It's going to be a good 3 seconds of eye contact. And you're like, nope, fuck it. I'll take a shuttle. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing this again. Yeah.
And I'm only taking Nick, the microsecond. We only have so much time here. And I'm like, I don't care. Get on a shuttle.
Yeah, it's the weirdest eye contact of your life. It is. I don't want to
imagine just the idea of having to watch yourself die over and over and over again. There's a lot to that too.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, you're right, because the phaser thing is much more visceral and disturbing than just evaporating.
Well, I think the phaser thing wouldn't bother me as much because I wouldn't see contact.
Well, you're right too. Like let's say it's three seconds of eye contact. The clone you knows he's about to be evaporated, right? So there's going to be a flicker of like, I'm fine with this. I decided to do it, but I do have to come to terms with the fact that I am about to die. And you're going to see that. Yeah, that'd be weird. Okay, Nick, I think you're right. I think I'm okay with the existential elements of it, but the awkward eye contact.
The only phaser element would be like you'd walk in one day to a room of old Heatons, just dead with phaser wounds.
It's just you know what? And this goes back to the whole like British seamen's outfits and be the Prestige. It's just me and a bunch of top hats laying around in piles of bearded corpses, and then like the surviving Heaton parades into the room and starts singing Gilbert and Sullivan, and it's like, yeah, this is disturbing. We really should have come up with a better system.
That's how the show should end.
And then Bob Newhart bolts upright and goes the weirdest thing.
And then an autistic kid shakes around Bob Newhart in a snow globe.
We're all inside the snow globe, fellas. I'm telling you.
I believe it.
We're all in the snow globe. Well, guys, on that note, I will go ahead and end it. It has been a pleasure talking to you and discussing these alternately brilliant, glorious, and horrendous Star Trek conspiracy theories. Nick, you will come back on momentarily for one of our fun adventures. Yeah. And so thank you for your time. And John, it is so much fun to talk to you. It's a pleasure to have you on the program again and to sallying forth and trekking with you. And where can people find you and what you do?
Sure. They can find me pretty much anywhere as Trek Profiles on Facebook or Twitter or on the web at trekprofiles.com. And I do a podcast that is long form interviews with Star Trek nerds about why they love the show. So if you like Star Trek nerdetry, this is the kind of thing you would like. So go check us out.
And you've had multiple people on, or I should say, I have had multiple guests from your show on my show.
Indeed.
Tim Sandifer, who's been on, I think 3 times now, has been on there. Aaron McDonald, who you mentioned earlier, has Alexandra Petri been on?
Yes, absolutely. She's been on. Dr. Mohammed Noor was also on as well, and including yourself. Yeah. So,
yep, and I have been
Great
on.
Great talking to you, John.
I don't remember. I assume I just talked about Garrett.
But pretty much the whole time, and it was glorious, and it was absolutely glorious, and it was great.
Wonderful.
Getting the chance to meet you as well, Nick. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, fellas.
Every week, my friend Nick Sperdute and I perform comedy on some other planet or world and then report back to you. However, due to COVID-19, and even worse, quantum COVID-19, we have not been able to perform any comedy on other planets of late. But I thought today, what would be fun is if I just went over some of the interesting things that I've learned playing around on Google Earth with the Oculus Quest that I owned the last few months. So we'll use that as a way to explore the world around us. Now, the first thing that I want to tell you is that you could go to a lot of beautiful national forests and
Heaton.
Nick, what? Hold on, Nick. Did you just beam into your apartment? How did you do that?
Oh shit. Okay, this is my fault. This one was my fault. I admit that. Oh God, you downloaded this into your brain, Heaton. This isn't a game anymore. You downloaded all this life into your actual brain.
Wait, Nick, slow down. No, I'm not in a game right now. Yes, I'm not on the Oculus Quest. I'm sitting on your couch with you.
No, you're in the game right now. Heaton, you're in it. This is the game. Look around you. Everything's different.
No, this is just your regular apartment. Wait, like in Total Recall?
Sure.
The Arnold Schwarzenegger film?
I haven't seen it. Yeah, okay.
So is part of the game on the Oculus Quest that I download an identity into my brain?
Yes.
Oh my God, Nick, this explains so much.
Is that like the movie?
Yeah, I know exactly.
I haven't seen it.
So in Total Recall,
what year was
Arnold
that?
Schwarzenegger, he, in the future, it's really expensive to go on vacation, and particularly a space vacation.
No, I mean, what year did the movie come out?
I think it came out in like 1978, maybe. I feel like late 70s, early 80s. It's based on a Philip K. Dick short story. But the conceit, we're getting away from the conceit. The conceit is that it's cheaper in the future to download false memories of a great vacation into your brain than it is to actually go on the vacation because they're indistinguishable but involve no logistics. And so you're telling me that I've done that and that I have, by virtue of it, I have downloaded false memories of a life that I don't even lead?
Yeah, all right. Yeah. That's like 96% only. I just looked it up and it came out in 1990. So you were way off.
Wait, really?
Yeah, June 1st.
Oh, Nick, this is presumably an example of the false memories that I have. That in the real universe, Total Recall came out in 1990, whereas in the downloaded memories that I have in my brain from the Oculus Quest, I thought it was 1978. Whoa, what a world.
That is great. That is nuts. And let me ask you a few questions. Maybe we can sort out what's real and what's fake.
Yeah.
Okay. Your name?
Andrew Heaton.
That's okay. That's true.
Okay. Oh, well, okay. That's good. So nothing.
Your middle initial?
Andrew. It's I go by my middle name. Andrew is my middle name.
You think it's A. Heaton?
No, I'm saying I don't go by my first name. My middle name is Andrew, but I go by Heaton, which is my last name because it makes me feel chummy.
God save us! You're really confusing me now. This seems like it must be a memory thing.
Well, hold on, wait. No, but this, Nick, you know, a lot of guys, they'd be freaked out to find out that their life was an illusion. I'm going to be honest with you. This sounds great to me. Like, it explains so much. So, like I was thinking about it earlier while I was playing the Oculus Quest, and I was like, I'm a comedian, but I don't do that much stand-up comedy. I podcast, but it's unclear how I monetized it.
That stuff's true.
I'm not married, but I talk about it all the time. So, like, I assume in the real life that I lead, that you will reveal to me any moment, all of these issues are not crazy, but are rather very explicable and probably far nicer than what I have been laboring under.
Okay. Well, here's the thing, bud. So I just looked up the settings.
Uh-huh.
And I'm going in here to actually see what's different.
Uh-huh. Am I married?
So no.
But I've got my own TV show?
Nope.
Am I a state legislator?
Okay, so the only difference is you're about 4 inches shorter.
In real life?
No, you're 4 inches taller in real life.
Oh, okay. But the bit about being a struggling comedian that has an unmonetized sci-fi podcast and is living on my friend's couch during lockdown because I'm so alone, that's all still the same?
Maybe we should just move past it. Your eyes are blue.
Are they pretty?
Very.
Okay. Well, that's something. All right. Well, I guess I'll take this game off now.
But then if you take the game off, then I disappear.
Nick? Is he? Oh, right. Okay. Well,
hey, what's up? You calling for me?
Yeah, it's fine. Am I a 6'4" blue?
Are you doing the podcast without me?
I'm so confused right now, Nick. Hey, can we just do the vagabonding thing next week? Can we just pick up where we left off next week?
Yeah. What's going on? You okay?
It's time we watch Total Recall. Let's just watch Total Recall and that'll be our evening. Let's just do that.
That movie from the 80s?
Yes, Nick, that movie from the 80s.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Yeah, let's watch.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, good to see you, buddy. Let's watch some movies. That's the show. Thanks for listening. Thank you, John Krikorian and Nick Sperdute, for coming on to weigh in on Star Trek fan theories. Until next time, tally ho!